Hey guys, tonight we begin with a quiet stroll into the past, a place where the air smells of wood smoke and regret, and the concept of a hot shower is as foreign as a spaceship. Imagine, if you will, waking up in a medieval village, say somewhere in 13th century England, where the cows outnumber the people and the people outnumber the teeth. It's a world of muddy paths, flickering hearths, and a surprising amount of rules about who can bake bread and who can't. The irony? Everyone romanticizes this era. Knights, castles, chivalry. Yet the average day in a medieval village would chew up your modern sensibilities and spit them out before lunch. Which, by the way, is just a lump of bread and a prayer. If you enjoy this kind of slow, meandering tale, maybe like and subscribe, but only if you feel like it. No pressure. Dim the lights, settle into your blankets, maybe turn on a fan for that soft hum. Let's slip into the past, where you, dear listener, are about to discover why you wouldn't last a day in a medieval village. Close your eyes, breathe deep, and let's begin. You wake up in a medieval village, and the first thing you notice is the smell. It's not the crisp, clean air of a forest, nor the faint lavender of your laundry detergent. No, it's a pungent cocktail of manure, unwashed bodies, and something you can only describe as yesterday's soup, but angrier. Your bed, if you can call it that, is a straw mattress that crunches under your weight, and you're sharing it with a family of fleas who seem to have claimed squatters' rights. The walls of your hut are wattle and daub, sticks and mud, essentially, and they're doing a terrible job of keeping out the damp chill. It's 5 a.m. and a rooster is screaming like it's auditioning for a horror movie. You stumble outside, hoping for a breath of fresh air, but the village is already awake, and it's chaos in slow motion. A pig waddles past, chased by a child who's barefoot and suspiciously sticky. The village well, your only source of water, is a communal bucket that looks like it's been used to wash both dishes and despair. You're thirsty, but the water has floaters. You're not sure what they are, and you don't want to know. Someone nearby is shouting about a cow that wandered into the wrong field, and apparently this is a legal issue that requires the entire village's attention. Here's the kicker. You're expected to work. Not a polite 9 to 5 with coffee breaks, but back-breaking labour from dawn to dusk. If you're lucky, you're a peasant farmer, which means you're ploughing fields with a wooden stick and a grudge. If you're unlucky, you're the village gong farmer, whose job is to scoop out the contents of everyone's latrines and cart them away. Yes, gong is the polite term for what you're shoveling. The irony? This is one of the better-paying jobs, because no one else wants to do it. You, with your modern aversion to anything less hygienic than a Clorox wipe, are already dreaming of a time machine. You haven't eaten yet, and breakfast is a distant dream. The best you can hope for is a hunk of coarse bread made from barley or rye, ground so roughly it feels like chewing gravel. If you're lucky, there's a smear of rancid butter or a bit of cheese that's been aging since the last king's coronation. You're starting to realise that farm to table here means we're all just trying not to die. And yet, the villagers around you seem unfazed, chewing their bread with the few teeth they have left, their faces weathered but resolute. You, meanwhile, are wondering how anyone survives a day without Wi-Fi and a toothbrush. You're still rubbing the sleep from your eyes, trying to make sense of this medieval village you've woken up in, when you realise something unsettling. This place is a labyrinth of rules, each one more bewildering than the last. It's not just about keeping the peace or working the fields. It's as if the entire village is held together by a spiderweb of regulations, customs, and unspoken expectations, all designed to keep you in line and slightly on edge. You, with your modern notions of freedom and fairness, are about to discover that every step you take here is governed by a code that feels like it was written by a particularly grumpy bureaucrat with a vendetta against fun. Settle in, breathe slow, and let's wander through the maze of medieval village life, where the rules are as inescapable as the mud under your feet. The first thing you notice is the manor lord, the man who owns this patch of earth, and by extension owns you. He's not some distant CEO in a glass tower. He's a real looming presence, his stone-walled manor house glowering over the village like a judgmental uncle. You're a tenant farmer, which means you don't own the land you work on, the house you sleep in, or even the air you breathe without owing him something. The Lord demands a portion of your crops, say a third of your barley, even if it's a bad year and your kids are eating dirt. You also owe him labour, days spent ploughing his fields or repairing his fences while your own crops wither. Forget to pay up? That's not a polite reminder in the mail. It's a visit from the bailiff, a man with a face like a disappointed potato and a knack for confiscating your best pig. But the Lord's rules are just the beginning. The village itself operates like a homeowners association from hell, with every villager keeping an eye on everyone else, ready to snitch over the smallest infraction. Take the open field system, for example. It sounds like a pastoral dream, fields stretching out under the sky, but it's actually a logistical fever dream. The village's farmland is divided into long, narrow strips, and each family gets a few scattered patches to cultivate. You can't just plant what you want. Oh no. The village elders, a group of weathered men who look like they've been arguing since the Norman conquest, decide what crops everyone grows. This year it's barley and oats, same as last year, same as the year before. Suggest planting something new, like a potato, not that they've heard of those yet, and you're met with stares that could curdle milk. The irony? They're all eating the same watery pottage every night, a stew so monotonous it makes you long for a plain potato. But innovation is treated like a personal insult to tradition. Then there's the church, which isn't just a building, but the heartbeat of the village, pumping out rules faster than you can say, Amen. You're expected to attend services, which are held in a stone church that's colder inside than out, with a priest mumbling in Latin, a language you don't understand and he barely does. The sermons are long, the pews are hard, and the whole experience feels like a test of endurance. Missing church isn't an option unless you fancy being labelled a heretic, which comes with a free public shaming session, or, if you're really unlucky, a chat with the bishop's men. The church also demands a tithe, 10% of everything you produce, from your grain to your apples, to the wool from your one sad sheep. You hand over your hard-earned goods to a priest who looks suspiciously well-fed, and you can't help but wonder if God's getting the short end of the stick. You, with your modern skepticism, are already calculating how many apples you could have eaten instead of donating them to the church's cellar. The manor court is where things get truly absurd. This isn't a courtroom with gavels and wigs. It's a gathering of villagers in a draughty barn, presided over by the Lord's steward, a man who loves his ledger more than his own children. The court handles everything from serious disputes to the kind of petty nonsense that makes you question humanity's progress. Someone's cow wandered into someone else's strip of land and ate a cabbage. Court case. Someone's fence is leaning 2 inches too far into a neighbour's plot. Court case. You accidentally mutter something sarcastic about the Lord's new cloak. Congratulations, you're now on trial for disrespect, which could cost you a fine, a day in the stocks, or a public apology that feels like a one-man play titled Humiliation, the Musical. The stocks, by the way, are a wooden contraption in the village square where you're locked in, head and hands trapped, while passers-by chuck rotten vegetables or, worse, unsolicited advice. You, with your modern sense of dignity, are horrified at the thought of being pelted with mouldy turnips, while your neighbour lectures you on fence maintenance. Even the smallest details of life are governed by rules that feel like they were invented to make you miserable. Want to bake your own bread? You can't. The Lord owns the village oven, and you have to pay a fee to use it, usually in the form of a loaf or two from your batch. Want to grind your grain into flour? That's another fee for the Lord's mill, where the miller skims a bit off the top for himself. Try to bypass these rules, say by grinding your grain with a hand mill, and you're breaking the law, facing a fine or a confiscated millstone. The irony? The bread you're slaving over is so coarse it could double as a doorstop, yet you're paying for the privilege of eating it. You're starting to see why medieval peasants didn't smile in paintings. They were too busy calculating how much of their harvest was going to the Lord, the church, or the miller's sticky fingers. And let's not forget the social rules, the unwritten ones enforced by the village's collective side-eye. You're expected to know your place in the pecking order, which is less a ladder and more a greased pole. The lord's at the top, obviously, followed by his steward, the priest, and a handful of slightly less poor villagers who own an extra cow or two. You, a lowly tenant farmer, are somewhere near the bottom, just above the gong farmer, the poor soul who cleans the latrines, and the village idiot, who at least gets to skip church because everyone assumes he's possessed. Say the wrong thing to the wrong person, like joking about the steward's questionable math skills, and you're ostracized faster than you can say, bad harvest. The village thrives on gossip, and one misstep can turn you into the main character in a story that ends with you being shunned, or, worse, accused of something vague like disturbing the peace. The most maddening part? These rules aren't just about control, they're about survival in a world where resources are scarce and trust is scarcer. The open field system ensures everyone grows the same crops, so a bad harvest doesn't wipe out the entire village. The church's tithes, in theory, support the poor and fund prayers for everyone's souls. The manor court, for all its pettiness, keeps disputes from escalating into blood feuds. But you, with your modern ideas of fairness and efficiency, can't help but see the absurdity. Why does the Lord get a cut of your crops when he spends his days hunting deer and flirting with his wife's maids? Why does the church need your last onion when the priest's robes are finer than anything you'll ever wear? And why, oh why, is there a rule about how many sticks you can collect from the forest without paying a wood penny to the Lord? As the day wears on, you're exhausted just trying to keep track of it all. You've bowed to the steward, paid your oven fee, avoided the wrong patch of grass, and somehow managed not to offend the priest. But you're starting to realize that surviving a day in a medieval village isn't about strength or cunning. It's about navigating a rulebook that seems designed to trip you up at every turn. You, with your dreams of Netflix and takeout, are already plotting your escape, but the nearest town is a day's walk, and the road is crawling with bandits who don't care about your opinion on feudalism. So you trudge back to your hut, dodging a stray chicken and a neighbour's suspicious glare, wondering how anyone keeps all these rules straight without losing their mind. You're halfway through your day in this medieval village, your tunic sticking to your skin, your feet caked in mud that smells suspiciously like it's been fertilized with something unholy. The sun is high, and you're desperate for a moment of cleanliness. A shower, a sink, even a wet wipe would feel like a miracle. But as you look around, you realize that hygiene in this 13th century hamlet is less a daily ritual and more a distant fantasy, reserved for the wealthy or the delusional. The villagers, with their weathered faces and questionable odours, seem unbothered. But you, with your modern obsession with soap and sanitation, are about to learn that staying clean here is a battle you're destined to lose. Settle back, let the world fade, and let's wade into the gritty reality of medieval hygiene, where cleanliness is a dream you can't afford. Your first instinct is to wash your face, to scrub away the grime of a morning spent dodging pigs and hauling water from a well that's more swamp than spring. But water, you quickly discover, is a precious commodity, and not in the way you're used to. The village well is the only source, a stone-ringed hole in the ground where everyone draws their water for drinking, cooking, and occasionally washing. The bucket is communal, lowered by a rope that's frayed and suspiciously slimy, and the water itself is cloudy, with bits of something floating in it. You hesitate, your modern germaphobe brain screaming about bacteria, but the villagers dip their hands in without a second thought, splashing their faces or rinsing a bowl that's seen better days. You try it, gingerly, and the water feels like it's leaving you dirtier than before. The irony? This is the clean water. The river downstream, where the laundry happens, is where the real horrors lurk. Bathing, you learn, is a rare event, treated with the same reverence as a holiday or a royal visit. The lord might have a wooden tub in his manor, filled with lukewarm water heated over a fire, but for you, a lowly tenant farmer, a bath is a logistical nightmare. You'd need to haul buckets of water, heat them in a pot over your smoky hearth, and then pour them into a barrel or trough, if you even have one. The effort alone is exhausting, and the villagers around you seem to think it's unnecessary. Bathing too often, they whisper, can weaken the body, letting in bad humours that cause disease. You, with your memories of hot showers and lavender body wash, are dumbfounded. The only soap available is a lumpy greyish blob made from animal fat and wood ash, with a texture like wet sand and a smell that reminds you of a barn after a rainstorm. You try scrubbing with it, and it feels like you're exfoliating with regret. Your clothes are another problem, and they're making your skin crawl, literally. Your wool tunic, coarse and heavy, itches like a swarm of ants, and it hasn't been washed since the last harvest festival, which was months ago. Laundry is a communal affair, done in the river alongside the village's livestock, children, and the occasional stray dog. You join the women at the riverbank, where they're pounding their clothes against rocks with a vigour that suggests they're taking out their frustrations on the fabric. The water is murky, carrying the runoff from the fields and the waste from the village, and you're not sure if your tunic is getting cleaner or just swapping one kind of dirt for another. Drying your clothes means hanging them on a fence or a tree, where they'll pick up the scent of wood smoke and whatever the wind's carrying. The irony? The villagers believe that wearing the same clothes for weeks builds character, or at least saves you from the sin of vanity. You, meanwhile, are dreaming of a washing machine and a bottle of detergent that smells like ocean breeze. Then there's the matter of personal facilities. The village latrine is a pit, sometimes with a wooden plank for a seat if you're lucky, tucked behind a hedge or a flimsy screen of woven branches. Privacy is a myth. You're squatting next to your neighbour, who's cheerfully discussing the weather or the quality of this year's barley. Toilet paper hasn't been invented, and your options are limited to leaves, straw, or, if you're feeling extravagant, a scrap of wool that's already been used for something else. You try the straw, and it's about as comfortable as wiping with a handful of twigs. The latrine itself is a communal nightmare, never cleaned except by the gong farmer, a man whose job is to shovel out the contents and cart them away to fertilise the fields. He's the village's unsung hero, paid in coins and contempt, and you can't help but admire his resilience while gagging at the thought of his workday. You, with your modern love of flush toilets and scented toilet paper, are already planning to hold it until you can escape this century. Your teeth are another casualty in this war on hygiene. Toothbrushes are centuries away, and the best you can do is rub your teeth with a cloth or chew on a twig, which the villagers call a chewing stick and swear by. The twig tastes like dirt and does little to dislodge the bits of gritty bread stuck in your molars. You notice the villagers' smiles, or lack thereof, and it's like peering into a dental horror show. Teeth are blackened, chipped, or missing entirely, and losing a tooth is treated like a badge of honour, proof you've survived another year. The local remedy for toothache is a poultice of herbs, or in desperate cases, a visit to the blacksmith, who doubles as the village dentist. You imagine his hammer and pliers, and suddenly your toothache doesn't seem so bad. You, with your electric toothbrush and biannual dental cleanings, are starting to panic at the thought of your enamel's future. Even your hair is a lost cause. Combs are rare, made of bone or wood, and they're about as effective as raking your fingers through a haystack. Lice are a fact of life, and you catch a neighbour scratching her scalp with a practiced nonchalance that makes your skin crawl. The villagers treat lice like annoying house guests, unpleasant but inevitable, and the only remedy is a concoction of vinegar and herbs that smells worse than the problem it's meant to solve. You try to run your fingers through your hair, only to find it matted with sweat and something you hope is just mud. Shaving is another ordeal, done with a knife that's seen more action cutting bread than beards, and you're not brave enough to let the village barber anywhere near your face with his rusty blade. As the day drags on, you're overwhelmed by the sheer effort it takes to stay even remotely clean. Every task, washing your face, cleaning your clothes, using the latrine, feels like a battle against the villagers' indifference to hygiene. The villagers, meanwhile, seem perfectly content, their bodies accustomed to the dirt, their noses immune to the smells. You catch a whiff of yourself and realise you're starting to blend in, which is both a relief and a horror. The irony? Cleanliness here isn't about health, it's about status. The Lord might bathe once a month, the priest might splash his face before a sermon, but you, a peasant, are expected to embrace the grime as part of your lot in life. You, with your memories of body scrubs and hand sanitizer, are already plotting ways to boil an entire cauldron of water just to feel human again. By late afternoon, you're filthy, itchy, and resigned. You've given up on the idea of a bath, settled for a quick splash from the well, and accepted that your tunic will be your second skin until the next laundry day, if you survive that long. The villagers move through their tasks with a stoic acceptance, their bodies a testament to a life where hygiene is a luxury, not a necessity. You, meanwhile, are counting the hours until you can wake up in your own bed, where showers are hot, towels are soft, and the only thing you share with your neighbours is a Wi-Fi password. For now, you trudge back to your hut, the weight of the day's dirt settling on your shoulders, and you wonder how anyone survives a lifetime in a place where cleanliness is a dream you can't afford. The sun is dipping low in the medieval village, casting long shadows over the muddy paths and thatched roofs, and your stomach is growling with a ferocity that could rival the village dogs. You've spent the day hauling water, dodging petty disputes, and trying to ignore the itch of your unwashed tunic, and now all you can think about is food. In your modern life, dinner might mean a quick scroll through a delivery app, a pizza, or maybe a salad with all the trimmings. But here, in this 13th century hamlet, food is a different story, one of scarcity, repetition, and a stubborn refusal to be anything close to delicious. You're about to sit down to a meal that makes you question whether survival is worth the effort. Settle deeper into your blankets, let the hum of the fan carry you, and let's explore the grim reality of a medieval village dinner, where glorious is a word best left unsaid. You stumble into your hut, exhausted from a day in the fields, where you've been wrestling with a wooden plough and a soil that seems to hate you. Your hands are blistered, your back aches, and you're dreaming of something hearty, maybe a burger, fries, or even just a bowl of pasta. Instead, you're greeted by the sight of a blackened pot simmering over the hearth, its contents bubbling with a sound that's more ominous than inviting. This is pottage, the cornerstone of every meal in the village, a watery stew that's less a recipe and more a cry for help. It's made from whatever's on hand: barley, oats, a handful of wilted greens, maybe a turnip if you're lucky. If the harvest was good and the Lord's men didn't take too much, there might be a scrap of meat, usually pork or mutton, boiled until it's a grey, stringy memory of its former self. You peer into the pot and the smell hits you, earthy, slightly sour, like a vegetable that's been thinking about retirement. The pottage is served in a communal wooden bowl placed on a rough table that wobbles with every touch. Spoons are a luxury and forks are a distant dream reserved for the Lord's table, so you're expected to dip your hands in or use a chunk of bread as a makeshift utensil. The bread, oh, the bread. It's your constant companion, a dense, gritty loaf made from rye or barley, ground so coarsely you can feel the chaff between your teeth. It's baked in the Lord's oven, for a fee, of course, and it's so hard you're half convinced it could double as a weapon. You tear off a piece and it fights back, requiring a level of jaw strength that would impress a bodybuilder. The villagers call it good bread, and you're starting to suspect they're either lying or have never tasted anything better. The irony? This loaf is the backbone of every meal, and you're supposed to be grateful for it, even as you check your teeth for chips. You sit down with the other villagers, your neighbours, who smell as bad as you do, and seem unfazed by the meal's lack of appeal. Everyone digs into the pottage, hands scooping and slurping, and you try to follow suit. The first bite is an experience. The broth is thin, the grains are chewy, and the greens have a bitterness that makes you wonder if they were plucked from the roadside. There's a faint hint of salt, a rare treat, but it's not enough to mask the fact that this is food as survival, not pleasure. You chew slowly, partly to savour what little flavour there is, partly to avoid swallowing a pebble that's snuck into the flour. You, with your memories of spice racks and grocery stores, are already mourning the absence of seasoning. Pepper is a luxury for the rich, and herbs are mostly used for medicine, not cooking. To wash it down, there's ale, the village's answer to the questionable water from the well. You've seen the floaters in that bucket, so you're not about to risk a sip of fresh water. The ale is weak, cloudy, and tastes like it was brewed in a sock, but it's safer than the alternative. Everyone drinks it, men, women, even the children, who sip it with the same enthusiasm you reserve for a morning coffee. It's low in alcohol, more like a fermented porridge than the craft beer you're used to, but it's the only thing keeping you from dehydration. You take a cautious gulp, and it's like drinking liquid bread, heavy and slightly sour. You miss your filtered water bottle, your sparkling sodas, your fridge full of options. The villagers, meanwhile, clink their wooden mugs and toast to a good harvest, as if this meal is a cause for celebration. If you're lucky, there's a bit of cheese on the table, a hard, crumbly wedge that's been aging in someone's hut for longer than you'd like to know. It's sharp, almost aggressive, and you're not sure if it's supposed to taste like that or if it's just gone rogue. There might be an apple or two, small and tart, picked from a gnarled tree that's seen better days. Fruit is a rare treat, dependent on the season and the whims of the weather, and these apples are so sour they make your eyes water. You bite into one, hoping for a burst of sweetness, and instead get a face-puckering reminder that nature isn't here to coddle you. The villagers eat them with relish, their teeth, or what's left of them, crunching through the tough skin, and you wonder how they've survived this long on food that seems designed to punish. The worst part isn't the taste, or lack thereof, it's the scarcity. Food is never guaranteed in a medieval village. A bad harvest, a harsh winter, or a band of bandits could mean empty bellies for weeks. The Lord takes his share first, the church demands its tithe, and you're left with whatever's left, which is often barely enough to keep you going. The villagers hoard their grain, hide their apples, and guard their pigs like they're guarding gold. Sharing is less about generosity and more about ensuring the village doesn't starve come spring. You, with your modern expectation of 3 square meals a day, are already feeling the gnawing panic of hunger. Breakfast was a crust of bread, lunch was skipped because you were too busy fixing a fence, and now this pottage is supposed to carry you through the night. You're starting to understand why medieval people prayed so much. Half of it was probably begging for a better meal. There's a rhythm to the meal, a quiet resignation as everyone eats what's in front of them. The villagers don't complain. They've never known anything else. To them, this pottage, this bread, this sour ale is life itself, a hard-won victory against the land and the Lord. You, on the other hand, are mentally scrolling through every restaurant menu you've ever seen, dreaming of flavors that don't exist here. Tomatoes, chocolate, anything with a hint of spice. The irony is that this food, as meager as it is the result of backbreaking labor. Yours, your neighbors, the entire village's. Every grain of barley, every wilted leaf, every scrap of meat represents hours of toil, and yet the reward is a meal that makes you question whether survival is worth it. As you scrape the last of the pottage from the bowl, your stomach still grumbling, you realize that food in a medieval village isn't about pleasure or even sustenance, it's about endurance. You're not eating to enjoy, you're eating to make it to tomorrow. The villagers around you finish their meal, wipe their hands on their tunics, and start preparing for bed, their faces showing no trace of disappointment. You, with your modern palate and your fridge full of leftovers in another life, are already plotting ways to sneak an extra apple or barter for a bit of cheese. But deep down, you know the truth. In this village, food is a battle, and you're not sure you have the stomach for it. As the sun sets, the village grows quiet, but it's not a peaceful quiet. It's the kind of quiet that comes from exhaustion, from bodies worn out by labor and minds worn out by worry. You're expected to be in bed by dark, not because of some cozy bedtime routine, but because candles are expensive and the Lord doesn't like people wasting resources. Your straw mattress is waiting, still crunchy, still flea-infested. You lie down, trying to ignore the itch, the cold, and the distant howl of something that's probably not a dog. You start to think about your day. You've survived, barely. You didn't drink the water, you didn't break any of the Lord's rules, you think, and you didn't get dragged into a court case over a pig. But you're hungry, you're filthy, and you're pretty sure you've caught something from that communal pottage bowl. The irony? This was a good day. No plague, no bandits, no accusations of witchcraft. Just another day in a medieval village where survival is a victory and comfort is a fairy tale. You close your eyes and the sounds of the village fade. The crackle of the fire, the creak of the hut, the distant argument about whose cow is whose. You're starting to drift off, and in your half-dream state you imagine your modern life, your soft bed, your hot shower, your fridge full of food that doesn't fight back. You realize with a quiet chuckle that you wouldn't last a day in a medieval village, and honestly, neither would anyone else you know. As you slip deeper into sleep, the medieval village fades away, replaced by the hum of your fan and the softness of your pillow. You're back in your world, where water comes from a tap, food comes from a store, and the only rules you have to follow are the ones you choose. The past is a fascinating place to visit, but you wouldn't want to live there. Not for a day, not for an hour. So rest easy, dear listener. You've survived your imaginary day in a medieval village, and that's more than enough. Good night. You wake up in medieval Europe, sometime in the 13th century, in a world that feels both foreign and familiar, like a half-remembered dream. The air is cool, heavy with the damp promise of morning dew, and the faint smell of wood smoke curls through the room. You're lying on a straw-stuffed mattress, its prickly contents shifting beneath you as you stir. The blanket, a coarse weave of wool, scratches against your skin, but it's warm enough to keep the chill at bay. You're not a knight clad in gleaming armor, not a peasant bent over in the fields, nor a merchant with a purse full of clinking coins. You are the miller, and your world is one of grinding stones, rushing water, and the soft, ever-present dust of flour. Your home is the mill itself, a sturdy, timber-framed structure perched beside a sluggish stream that gurgles just outside. The building creaks as it settles, its wooden bones groaning under the weight of years. The water wheel, just beyond the wall, thumps rhythmically, already turning as if it knows the day's work before you do. It's a sound you've grown used to, a low, hypnotic hum that's as much a part of you as your own heartbeat. You swing your legs over the edge of the mattress, the packed earth floor cool beneath your bare feet. You pull on a rough wool tunic, its fibers catching on your calloused hands, and a pair of hose that have seen better days. They're practical, though, built for a life spent hauling sacks and dodging flour clouds. As you stretch, a faint ache lingers in your shoulders from yesterday's labor. The mill is your kingdom, but it's a demanding one. You glance around the small loft where you sleep, a cramped space tucked under the mill's slanted roof. A narrow window, little more than a slit in the wall, lets in a sliver of grey dawn light. Through it, you can see the stream, its surface rippling like liquid silver, and the water wheel, its paddles slick with moss. The wheel's motion is relentless, driven by the stream's steady flow, and it sets the pace for your day. You smile faintly, thinking of how the village depends on that wheel, on you, to keep their bread on the table. Yet for all their need, they don't exactly love you. You descend the creaky ladder to the mill's main room, each step a familiar ritual. The air down here is thicker, laced with the nutty, slightly sweet scent of ground wheat. Flour dust hangs in the air, catching the light like a faint mist. It's a world of soft edges, where everything seems dusted with a fine white powder. Your hands, your clothes, even your thoughts feel coated in it sometimes. The millstone, a massive circle of grooved granite, dominates the room. It's already turning, its low rumble filling the space with a sound that's both soothing and insistent. You check the wooden gears that connect the wheel to the stone, running your fingers along their worn edges. They're solid for now, though one cog has a slight wobble. You'll need to fix it soon, but not today. Today, there's grain to grind. You pause by the door, looking out at the village beyond. Smoke curls lazily from chimneys, and the faint cluck of chickens drifts on the breeze. The village is waking, just as you are, but you're already a step ahead. The miller's day starts early because hunger doesn't wait. You think about the irony of your position. Everyone needs you, yet half the village whispers that you're a cheat. They mutter, accusing you of skimming extra flour from their sacks. You shake your head, a dry chuckle escaping your lips. A pinch here, a handful there. It's just the cost of doing business, isn't it? Besides, they'd be lost without you. No miller, no flour, no bread. And a village without bread is a village on edge. You step outside briefly, feeling the cool air on your face. The stream burbles beside the mill, its surface flecked with leaves and the occasional darting fish. You check the water wheel, running your hand along its weathered wood. It's holding up, though the axles creak more than they used to. Maintenance is a constant battle, but you've learned to live with it. The wheel turns, the stones grind, and the village eats. That's the deal. You head back inside, the flour dust settling on your shoulders like a second skin. The day's first customers will arrive soon. Farmers with their sacks of barley, bakers demanding fine wheat, maybe even a widow with a pitiful handful of rye. You'll grind for them all, taking your toll, keeping the balance. As you prepare the hopper, pouring in a small pile of grain to test the stones, you feel a strange pride. The miller's life isn't glamorous. No one writes songs about you, no one carves your name into stone. But you're the one who keeps the village alive, the one who turns their harvest into sustenance. You smirk, thinking of another old saying, "The miller's hands are never clean." Yours are already dusted white, and the day's barely begun. Maybe there's truth to the rumours after all. You laugh softly, the sound swallowed by the millstone's steady hum, and get to work. The wheel keeps turning, and so do you. You stand in the heart of the mill, the air thick with the faint nutty scent of grain and the ever-present haze of flour dust. It's morning, and the sun has just begun to creep above the horizon, casting slanted beams through the small, unglazed window of your timber-framed mill. The light catches the floating particles, turning them into a soft, shimmering mist, like a gentle snow that never settles. The millstone, a massive circle of grooved granite, rumbles steadily below the wooden hopper, its low, rhythmic crunch a soothing constant in your world. The water wheel outside groans and thumps, driven by the sluggish stream, its paddles slick with moss and river water. You're the miller, and this is where your day begins in earnest. Not with fanfare, but with the quiet, relentless grind of stone on grain. You check the wooden gears that connect the water wheel to the millstone, running your calloused fingers along their worn, smooth edges. They're sturdy, though one cog has a slight wobble, a reminder of the endless maintenance that keeps your mill alive. You'll deal with it later. Maybe. For now, the mechanism holds, and the stones keep turning. You adjust the hopper, a funnel-shaped wooden box suspended above the millstone, ensuring the grain will feed evenly into the grind. Too fast, and the flour comes out coarse. Too slow, and you'll be here all day. It's a delicate balance, one you've learned through years of dusty trial and error. The first customer arrives before the sun's fully up, his boots crunching on the path outside. It's a farmer, red-faced and smelling faintly of hay and sweat, his tunic patched at the elbows. He drops a heavy sack of barley at your door with a thud that sends a small cloud of dust into the air. "Mind you don't take too much toll, miller," he says, his tone half joking, half sharp, his eyes narrowing as he wipes his brow. You give him a nod, your face a mask of practiced innocence, and heave the sack onto your shoulder. The toll, your payment for grinding, is a fraction of the grain, maybe a 16th, sometimes an 1/8 if you're feeling bold or the farmer's not paying attention. It's the miller's prerogative, a custom as old as the mill itself, though it earns you no love from the village. You carry the sack to the hopper, the coarse weave of the burlap rough against your hands. With a practiced motion, you untie the knot and pour the barley in, the grains rattling like a soft rain as they spill into the wooden chute. The millstone takes over, grinding the barley into coarse flour, the sound a steady, hypnotic crunch that fills the room. You watch the flour collect in the trough below, a pale, powdery pile that grows with each turn of the stone. It's mesmerizing in a way the raw grain transforms into something that will feed a family, maybe even the Lord's household. You're not just grinding grain, you're grinding life itself, though you'd never say something so lofty out loud. It'd sound ridiculous, and besides, the village already thinks you're too full of yourself. Another customer arrives, a baker this time, his apron stained with yesterday's dough and his hands flour dusted, though not as much as yours. He's here for wheat, fine grain for the Lord's table, not the coarse stuff the peasants eat. "Make it quick, miller," he says, impatient as always. You adjust the millstone, tightening the gap between the stones to produce a smoother, finer flour. It's more work, and the stones wear faster this way, but you charge a bit extra for the trouble. The baker doesn't blink. He knows the Lord's steward will pay, and pay well, for bread that's soft and white. You pour his wheat into the hopper, and the millstone hums, turning golden kernels into a fine, pale powder that drifts like a gentle fog. As you work, You overhear the baker muttering about a peddler who passed through yesterday, swearing the king's raising taxes again. You file that away, not because you care about the king's coffers, but because information is currency in a village. The mill is a crossroads, a place where everyone comes eventually, and you hear it all. Taxes, scandals, lost cows, secret trysts. You don't gossip, not openly, but you listen. A miller who doesn't know the village's pulse is a miller who doesn't last. The morning wears on, and the mill grows busier. A widow arrives with a small sack of rye, barely enough for a single loaf. Her hands tremble as she hands it over, her eyes tired and sad. You wave off her offer to pay the toll. Some days, you're not as heartless as the village thinks. "No charge," you say softly, and she nods, grateful but too proud to say it. You grind her rye carefully, making sure every grain is used. It's a small act, but it matters. The millstone keeps turning, and the flour piles up, a quiet promise of sustenance. You pause for a moment, wiping your hands on your apron, leaving white streaks on the already dusty fabric. The mill is warm now, the air heavy with the scent of flour and the faint creak of wood. You glance out the window where the stream glitters under the rising sun. The water wheel keeps its steady pace, unhurried, unyielding. You think about the irony of your trade. The village needs you, depends on you, yet they watch you like hawks, suspicious of every handful you take. They say the miller's hands are never clean, they say, and you smile to yourself, your hands indeed dusted white. Maybe they're right, but you're the one keeping their bellies full. You turn back to the hopper, ready for the next sack, the next customer, the next turn of the wheel. The morning grind goes on, steady and sure, just like you. It's mid-morning now, and the mill hums with a quiet energy, its air thick with flour dust that dances in the soft light streaming through the window. The millstone's steady rumble is your companion, a low, soothing drone that anchors the chaos of the day. Outside, the water wheel turns with its endless creaking rhythm, driven by the stream's gentle flow. You're the miller, standing at the heart of the village. Not the church with its solemn bells, not the Lord's manor with its high walls, but the mill. Everyone needs bread, and bread needs flour, and flour needs you. The village's pulse beats through your mill, and you feel it in every sack of grain, every whispered conversation, every wary glance. The stream of customers has grown steady now, their footsteps a soft patter on the packed earth path outside. A farmer's wife arrives, her apron patched and her hands rough from years of work. She sets a sack of wheat on the floor, its weight sending a small puff of dust into the air. "For the family," she says simply, her voice tired but firm. You nod, heaving the sack to the hopper. As you pour the golden kernels, the millstone takes over, grinding them into a fine, pale flour that collects in the trough below. The woman watches closely, her eyes sharp, counting every grain as if you might spirit some away. You don't, not this time. She's too watchful, and besides, you know her family's had a lean year. You take the standard toll, a 16th, and she seems satisfied, though she doesn't smile. She never does. Next comes a baker, his round face flushed from the heat of his ovens. His apron is a map of stains, dough, ash, and a smear of something that might be blackberry jam. He's here for barley flour, coarse and hearty, for the dark loaves the peasants favour. "Quick as you can, miller," he says, tapping his foot. You adjust the millstone's gap to let the grains pass through more roughly, saving wear on the stones. The baker doesn't care about finesse, he wants quantity, and you're happy to oblige. As you pour his barley into the hopper, he leans against the wall, wiping his brow and launching into a tale about a peddler who passed through yesterday. Swears the king's doubling the hearth tax, he grumbles, as if we've got coin to spare. You nod, saying little, but you store the tidbit away. Taxes mean grumbling, grumbling means unrest, and unrest means you'll hear more when the next customer comes. The mill is more than a place of work. It's a crossroads, a gathering point where the village's secrets spill out. You don't seek them out, but they find you. The farmer's wife mentioned a neighbour's cow that wandered off. Stolen, she thinks, though she won't say it outright. The baker mutters about a tavern brawl last night, something about a blacksmith and a merchant's son. You listen, your face neutral, as you sweep stray grains from the floor. A miller who doesn't know the village's undercurrents is a miller who missteps, and you've survived too long for that. You're not a gossip. Gossip gets you in trouble, but you're a collector of whispers, piecing together the village's story like a mosaic. A young lad dashes in, his cheeks red from running. He's the baker's apprentice, sent to fetch more flour because the first batch wasn't enough. Master says you shorted him last time, the boy says, bold as brass, though his eyes flicker with nerves. You raise an eyebrow, a dry smile tugging at your lips. Did he now? You say, your voice calm, almost amused. You know the baker's game. Complain about the toll to keep you on your toes. You grind the boy's wheat, taking care to measure the toll exactly, and send him off with a full sack and a pat on the head. The baker will find no fault today, but you'll have a word with him later, all smiles and subtle warnings. It's a dance, this business of trust and mistrust, and you've learned the steps well. By noon there's a brief lull, and you take a moment to sit on a stool by the window, chewing a crust of bread you baked yourself. It's coarse, a bit chewy, but it's yours, made from flour you ground last week. The stream outside glitters under the midday sun, its ripples catching the light like a scattering of coins. The water wheel turns, steady and unhurried, its creak a counterpoint to the millstone's hum. You think about the village beyond, the fields ripe with wheat, the church where the priest drones on about sin, the tavern where secrets are traded over ale. They all depend on you, though they'd never admit it. The Lord eats his fine white bread because of your mill. The peasants fill their bellies with coarse loaves because of your mill. Even the priest with his holy wafers needs your flour to play his part. You're the quiet thread that binds them all. Another customer arrives, a widow with a small sack of oats, her hands trembling as she sets it down. For porridge, she says softly, her voice barely above a whisper. You grind it for free, waving off the toll with a shrug. No need, you say, and her eyes soften, though she doesn't thank you. You don't expect her to. The millstone keeps turning, and the oats become a fine, pale meal, enough to keep her going for a few days. You hand her the sack, and she shuffles out, leaving you alone with the mill's quiet rhythm. You smile to yourself, thinking of the irony. They call you a cheat, but you're not always the villain they make you out to be. Not always. The morning's work stretches on, the mill a steady heartbeat in the village's daily life. You're not just grinding grain, you're grinding time, stories, lives. The flour dust settles on your hands, your tunic, your world, and you carry on, the miller at the centre of it all, keeping the village fed, one sack at a time. The sun hangs high now, its warm light filtering through the mill's small window, painting the flour-dusted air in soft golds and ambers. The millstone hums its steady, soothing tune, a low rumble that blends with the creak of the water wheel outside, turning endlessly in the stream's gentle current. You're the miller, standing in your dusty kingdom, your hands white with flour, your tunic speckled with the morning's work. The village's pulse still beats through your mill, but the afternoon brings a shift, a slower, heavier rhythm, laced with the small troubles that always seem to creep in when the day grows warm. You're sweeping stray grains from the floor, the broom's bristles whispering against the packed earth, when a shout breaks the calm. Miller, the wheel's stuck. It's a young lad, no more than 12, his face flushed and his chest heaving from a sprint across the village. You sigh, setting the broom against the wall, and wipe your hands on your apron, leaving fresh streaks of white. Trouble, as always, picks the worst moment to arrive. You step outside, the air warm and thick with the scent of grass and river water. The stream glitters under the sun, but the water wheel is still, its paddles motionless, like a giant caught mid-stride. A thick branch, gnarled and heavy with sodden leaves, has wedged itself between the paddles, stopping the flow. You mutter under your breath about careless boys and lazier streamkeepers, though you know it's just the river's way of keeping you humble. Wading into the cold, ankle-deep water, you feel the chill bite through your worn hose. The branch is stubborn, tangled in the wheel's slats, and you tug at it, your boots slipping on the slick stones. With a final heave, it comes free, and the wheel groans back to life, spitting water and moss as it turns. You trudge back to the bank, soaked to the knees, your tunic clinging uncomfortably. The lad watches, wide-eyed, and you give him a look, half stern, half amused. "Tell your master to check the stream next time," you say, and he nods, scampering off before you can add more. Back inside, the millstone's hum has faltered, its rhythm uneven. You frown, crouching beside it to inspect the grind. The flour coming out is too coarse, gritty enough to make even the heartiest peasant loaf chewy. You run your fingers along the millstone's grooves, feeling the worn edges. They need recutting, a job that requires a skilled mason and a full day's work, time and coin you don't have to spare. You curse softly, the sound swallowed by the mill's drone. For now, you adjust the hopper to slow the grain's flow, coaxing a finer grind from the tired stones. It's a temporary fix, and you know the baker will grumble if his flour's not up to the Lord's standards. Rustic, you'll call it, with a smile that disarms complaints. It's worked before. The afternoon's troubles aren't done with you yet. A woman arrives, her face sour as curdled milk, clutching a sack of oats so tightly her knuckles are white. "I'll be watching, Miller," she says, her voice sharp as a scythe. "Every ounce I'll count." You've seen her before. She's the blacksmith's wife, known for her sharp tongue and sharper eyes. The village whispers about your tolls, and she's clearly heard them. You nod, all charm, and take her sack with a flourish. "Nothing to worry about," you say, your tone smooth as the stream outside. You grind her oats with extra care, measuring the toll precisely under her watchful gaze. The millstone turns, the oats become a fine pale meal, and you hand her the sack, heavier than she expected. She checks it, weighing it in her hands, then nods grudgingly and leaves without a word. You shake your head, a wry smile tugging at your lips. Another satisfied customer, or at least one who can't complain. The mill quiets for a moment, and you lean against the wall, catching your breath. The air is warm now, the flour dust settling like a fine veil over everything. Your hands, the floor, the wooden beams overhead. You glance at the gears again, that wobbly cog nagging at your mind. It'll hold for now, but not forever. You think about the mason, the cost of his tools, the time it'll take to carve new grooves in the stone. Coin is always tight, and the Lord's steward isn't known for generosity. You could raise your toll, just a fraction, but the village would notice. They always do. They say the miller's hands are never clean, they'd say, and you'd have to smile through their glares. Another customer arrives, this time a farmer with a sack of rye, his face lined with worry. "Heard about the tax," he mutters as you take his grain. "King's men are coming next week, they say." You nod, keeping your face neutral, but your mind turns. Taxes mean less grain to grind, leaner times for everyone, including you. You pour his rye into the hopper, the millstone grinding it into a coarse, dark flour. The farmer's still talking, something about a neighbour's field gone fallow, but you're only half listening. The village's troubles are your troubles in a way. No grain, no flour, no mill. You hand him his sack minus the toll, and he shuffles off, still muttering. The afternoon stretches on, each small trouble piling like flour in the trough. A clogged hopper, a creaking axle, a customer who lingers too long, spilling gossip you don't need. You handle them all, your hands moving with the ease of long practice, your voice calm even when your patience thins. The millstone keeps turning, the water wheel keeps creaking, and you keep the balance, as you always do. You're the miller after all, the one they need, even if they don't trust you. As the sun begins to dip, casting long shadows across the mill's floor, you sweep up the last of the stray grains, the dust swirling like a quiet storm. The troubles of the afternoon fade for now, and you turn back to your work, the mill's steady hum carrying you forward. The sun has dipped below the horizon, leaving the sky a soft bruise of purple and gold. You stand outside the mill, the day's labour settling into your bones like dust into the cracks of the millstone. The water wheel still turns, but slower now, its rhythm a low, soothing hum that blends with the chirp of crickets and the distant bark of a village dog. The air is cooler, carrying the scent of damp grass and the faint lingering warmth of flour-dusted wood. You wipe your hands on your apron, the coarse fabric streaked with the day's work, and feel the world slow down around you. This is the evening's quiet, the moment when the village exhales and you, the miller, finally catch your breath. You step back inside the mill, the door creaking on its iron hinges. The interior is dim, lit only by the faint glow of a single tallow candle flickering on a wooden table. The millstone is still, its great bulk resting like a sleeping giant. Sacks of flour, neatly stacked, line the walls, each one a small victory over the day's demands. You check them absently, running your fingers along the rough burlap, ensuring none have torn or spilled. The villagers might whisper that you short their portions, but you know the truth. Every sack is weighed with care, every scoop accounted for. Well, mostly. You smirk at the thought. A miller's got to eat after all. You settle onto a stool by the table, the wood worn smooth by years of use. Your wife, Agnes, is in the small house attached to the mill, stirring a pot of pottage over the hearth. The smell of barley, onions, and a few precious herbs drifts through the open door, comforting in its simplicity. You'll eat soon, but for now you savour the stillness. The village is quiet, its pulse slowed to a murmur. No more farmers knocking at your door, no more children darting about, no more disputes over whose grain gets ground first. Just you, the mill, and the soft creak of the water wheel outside. You lean back, the stool creaking under your weight, and let your mind wander. Being a miller is a peculiar kind of existence, neither fish nor fowl in the village's rigid hierarchy. The lord up in his manor relies on your flour to feed his household, yet he'd never invite you to his table. The peasants need you to turn their hard-won grain into something they can bake, but they eye you warily, half convinced you're cheating them. You're not quite a craftsman, not quite a merchant, but something in between. A man who lives by the rhythm of water and stone, trusted by all and loved by few. It's a lonely trade in its way, but there's a strange pride in it. Without you, the village starves. That's power of a sort, though it comes with a price. Your thoughts drift to the day's small dramas. There was the widow who argued her sack was lighter than last week's, her sharp tongue cutting through the morning's calm. You gave her an extra handful of flour to quiet her, though you're sure she'll be back tomorrow with the same complaint. Then there was the boy who nearly lost a finger to the millstone's edge, too busy gawking at the gears to mind his step. You sent him home with a stern word and a pat on the head, grateful his mother didn't come storming in after him. These are the threads of your life, woven into the fabric of the village, each one small but essential. The candle flickers, casting long shadows across the mill's walls. You think of the stories you've heard about millers of old, tales of men who made pacts with spirits to keep their wheels turning, or who hid stolen grain in secret cellars. Nonsense, of course, but you can't help but smile at the thought. If you had a secret cellar, it'd be full of nothing but cobwebs and regrets. Still, there's something almost magical about the mill at night, the way it hums with a life of its own. The water wheel's steady groan, the faint rustle of grain in the loft. It's as if the mill is whispering its own story, one you're only half privileged to hear. You rise, stretching your arms, and step outside to check the wheel one last time. The stream is low tonight, its flow gentle but steady, enough to keep the wheel turning through the night. You adjust a wooden sluice gate, the wood slick with moss, ensuring the water doesn't pool too heavily. It's a small task, but one you've done 1,000 times, a ritual that grounds you. The stars are out now, pinpricks of light in a sky so vast it makes the village feel like a speck. You wonder briefly what lies beyond this place, beyond the fields and forests, beyond the Lord's manor and the king's distant court. But the thought passes. Your world is here, in the mill, in the quiet. Back inside, you blow out the candle, the faint scent of smoke curling into the air. You make your way to the house, where Agnes has set out a wooden bowl of pottage and a chunk of coarse bread. You eat in silence, the fire crackling softly, its warmth a small comfort against the evening's chill. Agnes hums a tune, an old one you've heard 100 times, and you feel the weight of the day lift, just a little. The mill will still be there tomorrow, with its creaks and groans, its endless demands. But for now, there's only this moment, the quiet, the warmth, the simple act of being. You finish your meal and lean back in your chair, the wood creaking softly. The village is asleep, the world at rest. You think of the flour sacks waiting in the mill, the grain yet to be ground, the lives that depend on your work. It's a humble legacy, perhaps, but it's yours. And as you close your eyes, the sound of the water wheel lulls you into a dreamless sleep, the evening's quiet wrapping around you like a well-worn cloak. The night has settled over the village like a heavy quilt, the kind that muffles sound and softens edges. You sit by the hearth in your small home, the fire's glow casting a warm circle of light across the packed earth floor. The mill is silent now, save for the distant murmur of the stream, its endless song a reminder that time turns as steadily as your water wheel. You're a miller, and your day has been long, filled with the grind of stone, the weight of grain, and the quiet judgments of a village that needs you more than it likes you. But now, in this final hour, your thoughts drift not to the day just past, but to what you'll leave behind. This is the miller's legacy, a story written in flour and sweat, in the creak of wood, and the trust of a community that's never quite certain of you. You lean back in your chair, the wood groaning under your weight, and stare into the fire. The flames dance, their flicker reminding you of the countless days you've spent in the mill, coaxing life from grain. Your hands, calloused and dusted with flour, rest on your knees. They're the hands of a man who's worked hard, not for glory, but for necessity. You think of your son Thomas, asleep in the next room, his breath steady and soft. He's 12 now, old enough to help with the sacks, to learn the rhythm of the millstone. Will he take up this trade? Will he inherit the mill, its burdens, its quiet power? You're not sure. The life of a miller is steady, but it's not easy, and you wonder if he'll want it, or if he'll dream of something beyond this stream, this village, this endless cycle of grain and flour. You rise, moving quietly so as not to wake Agnes, who's dozing by the hearth, her knitting forgotten in her lap. You step outside, the night air cool against your skin, sharp with the scent of damp earth and pine. The mill looms beside you, its silhouette dark against the starlit sky. It's more than a building, this mill. It's a living thing, a partner in your life's work. Its beams are weathered, its gears worn, but it's endured, just as you have. You walk to the stream, the grass crunching softly under your boots, and stand by the water wheel. It turns slowly, each revolution a testament to the simple genius of water and wood. You smile, a dry little quirk of the lips. They call you cunning, the villagers, but if you're cunning, it's only in keeping this old beast running. Your mind wanders to the stories you've heard, the ones whispered in the village square, or muttered over mugs of ale at the tavern. Millers, they say, are tricksters, skimming extra flour, hoarding wealth in secret. You shake your head. If only they knew the truth, that your wealth is measured in long hours, in the ache of your back, in the rare moments of peace like this one. But there's truth in their suspicion too. You're not a saint. A pinch here, a handful there. It's not theft, you tell yourself, just the cost of keeping the mill turning. The Lord takes his share, the church its tithe, so why shouldn't you? It's a small rebellion, one that keeps you human in a world that demands you be indispensable yet invisible. And so, the miller's day ends, as it began, with the soft creak of the wheel and the rustle of grain. Maybe you'll dream of flour-dusted hands or the river's endless song. Maybe you'll just sleep, lulled by the thought of a world that turns, slow and steady, like a millstone. If you liked this little journey, maybe leave a like or subscribe for more quiet tales. But for now, rest easy. The mill will still be there in the morning.